Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, from wherever you're joining as I kick off this Mara and Friends webinar series. Glad and pleasure to have you here. So this webinar series will be a series of open, honest conversation with partners across private markets ecosystem. And I'm so happy that today I have Stevan with me from AQVC Raise to join me my first episode regarding the fundraising frontier. So today we will unpack what fundraising really looks like in 2025, what has changed, what hasn't, and what's coming up in the future, and also how platforms like Mara and AQVC are helping investors and founders close this gap. So welcome, Stevan. Thank you very much for your time. And if you would like to say a couple of words about yourself, AQVC Raise, and yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you much, Aleksandra, for inviting me, and thank you to the entire Mana team for inviting us and to share the story that we're sharing with a lot of partners and a lot of
Mhm.
GPs and LPs within the VC space, but also slowly other asset classes as well. Now, maybe I can start because I would imagine that some of the attendees have heard of AQVC, perhaps some of those have not. So we do quite a lot of things. So I'd like to be succinct and perhaps give you a quick rundown as to what we do. So as AQVC, we started as a fund of funds back in 2021. And the reason why we opened up is because we wanted to democratize access to venture capital. Now, what this practically means is if you are, let's say, even a semi-professional investor and you have around 200, 250K in the pockets, and you want to reach those top performing venture capital funds, we wanted to make sure that you have that access because historically venture capital has been somewhat exclusive, in terms of entry. And thankfully, slowly but surely, with digital transformation and all the other capabilities, now even AI, we can see that a lot more investors can actually reach the top performing funds as well, right? So this is how we started. Now, given that we're quite data driven, we screen more almost around 6,000 funds right now. We've noticed specific patterns, and hence the raise, first of all, discovery now its raise pretty much has developed because we realized that funds tend to get stuck at two different points in the fundraising game. First of all, 30 to 40%, and then 60 to 70%. And this has remained steady across a couple of years right now, regardless of what's happening in the market, which is very interesting. And hence, we've realized that, what is out there in the market is that mostly the support that the funds are getting is just not effective enough, right? I wouldn't dive deeper into that. Of course, we have a whole webinar that we can talk about it, right? But we've made a suite of services where, we thought, this is definitely going to help because we listened to the objections, we've listened to the problems and whatnot. And this is why I guess I'm so happy to have this conversation with you as well, because for us, the main thing, I guess if I want to sum it up, is relationship thing. Right. We cover the relationship part. So we want to eliminate that friction between the LPs and GPs. And the way you do it is by being honest, being transparent, poking people, asking them questions slowly but surely, being elegantly persistent. So hopefully the webinar today will demystify at least some part of the process on the fundraising side, but also on the side where Mara helps as well and how both forces can be joined. A very long intro, I know. Hopefully
No,
that
I
makes sense.
appreciate that. No, I like long intros at least. Like, I don't need to ask you specific questions in the beginning, but it's good always to introduce yourself to the audience because maybe some of the audience doesn't know you. So it's great
Mhm.
to just see like your profile and everything. You also helped a lot of startups before and everything. So when it comes to fundraising, I received a lot of questions recently at Sifted Summit, before that VC Summit as well.
Okay.
Um, many questions, and I'm so happy for you that you are here today, that you can really uncover. So tell me, how does fundraising looks like in 2025?
Yes, it's a very tricky question. I guess everyone is fundraising out there. What I love about working with the LPs and GPs and previously working with startups, I wish as someone who's been in the startup ecosystem or the venture ecosystem for 15 years almost, if someone had shown me the capital flow before, because I think, there's a reason why people mature into who they are at 40 to 45. Because one of that reason, I guess, is they have access to the entire map of the ecosystem. And most of the entrepreneurs get to understand what's behind the venture capital funds only later in the process, right?
Hmm.
So demystifying that is very important. I would just relate, I mean, I think it keeps being the same in a sense that it's very relational, right?
Hmm.
And I guess what people are realizing more and more is that fundraising is essentially a sales game.
Exactly.
And it's about relationship building. And because of so many obstacles, and given that we are out of that free money era now, and now it's 100% a given that we're outside of that free money era, and we definitely have to work our ways, to get that capital and raise that capital, regardless of who we are, right? Whoever is raising. But everyone is understanding that, sales has been perhaps misrepresented before, or fundraising has been misrepresented before, and that people are really trying to understand that relationships are truly based on trust. And that, how you build trust is by, showing competence in one regard, but also being warm on the other side. And by working with hundreds of startups before, and now working, for a while with funds, with GPs, and with LPs, I've realized that more of them are really, understanding that, when you're raising money, you need to educate the person who you're talking to, essentially. Because being an LP, for example, or
Mhm.
someone who has that position where they have the money and they have so many asset classes where they can look at. They can invest into PC, they can VC, and PE, and I don't know, startups, right? It's about who gives them the best access to market intelligence, who is best at storytelling, because there's a huge saturation in the market. I mean, when you're fundraising, you're not just competing with your niche, you're competing with pretty much with the entire market, right? So it's all about signaling and getting that first initial hook, which is revealing enough, but not too revealing. So you get that interest. We always like to say that, LPs or whoever you're raising from, those are the elusive ladies at the bar. So you need to be a bit cheeky, right? But also you need to show your competence. You need to show your warmth. You need to show that you care and that you definitely have that sense of mission. And it's just that you are meeting the other person and telling you, well, listen, this is an adventure that I'm taking you on. And let's see if you would like to come with us on this adventure, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. Actually, during the Sifted Summit, I've been attending the session with Andrea Sommer, which is our client from Womankind's Venture. And I remember one of the topic I saw was like one of the key statement, actually, like don't lie, but don't tell the truth. Like
Yeah.
like tell something but not everything, like I think that correlates with your also hook that you just talked about, right? Like
Yeah.
how do you tell the story and how do you actually reveal just the bits of it,
Well,
right?
isn't it? I mean, for example, when you have a partner, for example, right? You want to make sure that your partner is a priority. If you give access to everything, everyone, and everything to everyone, then your partner doesn't really feel special, right?
Yeah.
So sharing information should be very exclusive, which means that slowly but surely I'm onboarding you. But with the level of information and vulnerability that I'm sharing with you, that should be a testament to my trust and to the fact that I'm basically giving you a priority ahead of others, right?
Yeah.
So this is very important in the fundraising game. People usually underestimate this, right? They just give out information freely, but that's also, I guess, another element that we can talk about is that people should value their hardly gained experience a bit more, right? It's very hard because it's huge saturation. We're swamped with information and signals all around. Most people have imposter syndromes or something
Yeah.
similar, right? So they're not really aware of how to value their knowledge. But actually, the way you get to value your knowledge is by coming across people, pitching stuff to them, and handling objections. And I guess maybe I can just relate to this part. Sorry, once again, I'm extending the question, but with startups, I used to work on their decks. And now a bunch of my work is actually working with funds and refurbishing their decks and the way they pitch to the LPs, right? So it's all about truly meeting the person, giving that safe space where you can just slowly and surely exchange stuff and ideas, right? But then again, realizing that the other person, when they're commenting and when they're raising a specific objection, that objection is actually an opportunity. And unfortunately, most people out there, when they're fundraising, when they are met with an objection, unfortunately, they haven't been in the sales role, so they get used to the objection. Rejection is out there all the time.
Yeah.
But the rejection actually has a seed of opportunity. There's definitely a reason why people are objecting. And then slowly but surely, as you talk to more people, more LPs, for example, you can use that objection and to the next person that you're talking to. Well, listen,
Mhm.
50 people have already raised this objection, and we
Yeah.
really thought about it. And this is how we applied it to our fund or our thesis or our strategy.
Mhm. Yeah,
And then people are already seeing you're competent. You're actually listening to the market.
Hmm.
And you can sort of lead me somewhere because I mean, if I'm investing money into you, that means I'm sort of also committing and saying, well, I want you to do this instead of, instead of me or on my behalf, because you have that competence and that leadership vision, which maybe I don't, or perhaps I don't have the time to dive into that much.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. And since you mentioned LPs, have you noticed like what they're looking for today?
Yes. Okay. Well, that's, I think what people usually want to learn on these webinars, for example, is something that should be mind-blowing, something that resolves their entire formula all of a
Oh
sudden or
no.
whatever, right? The thing about fundraising and anything actually in life is that it's always very personal, right? And every single person that you meet is very unique. There's different types of LPs that we work with. So we work with high net worth, we work with single family offices, multi-family offices, pension funds, fund of funds, we ourselves are fund of funds, right? So of course, there are certain elements that are always differentiating these LPs between one another, right? And their decision-making styles, the way they carry due diligence is also very, very different, right? But then again, everyone is very different, and this is why, one when they talk about with the LPs, one should make sure that, of course, there are certain instances which are important for a specific type of an LP, but there's also some uniqueness to every LP, and every LP likes to be listened to as a special person or as a special company, right? So, for example, maybe the first layer that we can demystify is that, for example, high net worth individuals, family offices tend to be somewhat more of a relationship driven than, let's say, fund of funds or other, institutionals and whatnot, right? Because of the way of how they make decisions. One are free to be emotionally charged when it comes to decision making, right? Whereas we as fund of funds, we have to be crazy rational to make sure that every decision that we make is very well thought out for LPs, right? Because this is how what we promise, right? Whereas, for example, other LPs can, I have the money. I personally like to invest into happiness, for example, and I'm going to find a fund who's going to, help people with their happiness or, for example, deal with depression or whatever it is, right? So it's personal and dear to them, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so that's one component. And the other component is also understanding, and I think that's very crucial. Maybe it's not directly replying to the question, but every LP also has a thesis in a sense, the way they look at the world. Okay. And I think that when funds are fundraising, and it's the same way with startups, they underestimate that the other person on the other side of the table also has a way of looking at it. And this is why most funds and most startups would pitch in a very overwhelming manner, detailing the thesis and whatnot without first understanding what's the way the other person is looking at life, right? Or the market itself. So this hasn't really changed, but what has changed is that more funds or GPs are understanding that they were not really listening to the LPs.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
And now they're trying to find ways of how to listen better because everyone is inundated with information stimuli. Everyone. As an LP, you get 200 requests every single month. It feels like, like just another brochure for traveling to Italy, for example, or to Dubrovnik or whatever it is. You just don't want to look at it because it's just so the same. And you're just frustrated because of that, right? And very rarely do we see that someone has truly taken the time to personalize the email, okay?
Yeah.
Or use a very interesting approach where they would say, I don't really know what I'm doing. But this is the part where I've come to, and now I've hit a blank page, I would love to hop on a call. And it's very honest, right?
Yeah.
But it still speaks of a process that that person has gone through. And this is why the LP would probably most likely engage, right? Some will not, some will do. Of course, it's a matter of testing. But, I guess on the LP front, the fundraising side, to respond finally to the question, I guess,
Yeah.
is that it's changing. And I guess the thing that's mostly changing, or the aspect that's mostly changing, is that everyone wants to find a tool or a company to support them in terms of a consultant or whatever it is, to
Hmm.
sort of just clear the huge bubble, the huge cloud of information that they're getting. right? They just want to sort of, I mean, the one that's healthiest, I guess, is the one that is just able to not be bombarded with amount of informational stimuli. Because, I mean, the doom scrolling, I mean, even in the investing world, we have the doom scrolling of constantly tracking information and stuff like that. So just finding a way of how to be truly mindful
Yeah.
within this overwhelmingly large space where it's more and more people coming to raise, operators turning VC and stuff like that. It's becoming a booming market, I guess, as well.
And what would you say, like, how does technology or that digital infrastructure actually plays some, like, a crucial maybe role into modern fundraising? What would you say on that?
So I guess, first of all, it speeds up the process. Right. I mean, there's a lot of things that you wish to outsource, and some of the funds out there, especially emerging managers, they're not able to outsource it to, let's say, humans, but they maybe because of the budget constraints. But this is precisely where technology comes in, and it's not perhaps even as expensive as human support would be. So it's sort of automized, automation is actually what helps. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. Another thing is that we have more and more insights and more and more platforms, more and more technology is essentially converting those insights into decision markers. And
Mm-hmm.
hence, when you chew a huge chunk of data and you have technology to chew it for you, then your, access to market intelligence or investing intelligence is improved, right? Because you don't have to go through that lengthy process of learning it for 20, 30 years anymore. You can learn way quicker now. Or you can be, for example, as we know, MBA programs are made for people to learn executive decision making. I think AI, for example, is one of those tools which will help us in executive decision making. If, of course, we have that cognition process before, because there's a lot of stats, by the way, on AI, which pertains to the this industry as well, that if you have a cognition process before using technology, technology is a great supplement.
Nice.
But if you use technology to think for you, you're doomed. Right. Because you don't know what you're doing, right? So this is very, very, very important. And I think this is the role of technology. And we're finally
Right.
realizing that AI is changing the scope. It's changing the way we look at the world, how we look at knowledge, where we're also looking, sort of understanding that it's not as a big of a boom as we expected. It's still early, right? We thought it's going to be, oh my God, we're all going to lose jobs, but not really, not yet. And maybe not even. I mean, we're starting to think, okay, maybe we screamed too loud too soon. So now everyone is understanding and relaxing and sort of saying, yeah, I definitely need to ride this wave, but let's maybe ride it in a smart way. Let's truly assess our needs and then let's see what's the best next step. Because if we don't ride this wave, we're going to miss out. But if we ride it too soon, maybe we'll just get drowned. So
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Now this is, I think, very good very good ending of our first section. The second section would be strategy and execution. So,
Mhm.
so how is actually fundraising done well, and what
Mhm.
makes the fundraising successful from your experience?
Okay. So that's a huge question. That's a huge, and hopefully we'll have, we'll have the structure necessary to sort of relay to the audience as to what makes successful fundraising. But in terms of the AQVC of how we see that is, first of all, an honest assessment of strengths and weaknesses of, first of all, the individuals who are fundraising.
Hmm.
And then also the thesis, right? Because what is interesting, investing world is always very exciting, but exactly that level of excitement blinds people. And as you know, in many of the VC funds out there or general partners and stuff like that, many of them are operators turned VC, right? So they have experience fundraising for startups. It's a very similar process, right? But then again, as you venture into a different sort of a domain,
Hmm.
it's very easy to teach and mentor others, but humans have a way of perfectly manipulating oneself, right? So
Yeah.
you need to have partners internally, but also externally, who will help you give you that mirror, like a compassionate witness mirror,
Yeah,
where
exactly.
you're free to not be judged, but also truly, truthfully see what your strengths and weaknesses are. It's very important. The sooner you do that, the sooner you humble yourself and
Yeah.
admit stuff to yourself, the easier the fundraising game will be. So when we start working with funds, for example, on their fundraising game, we normally start with a SWOT analysis, and it's very
Mm-hmm.
extensive. We attack it from so many corners because we know if they're not forced to respond to these questions in a 3 hour focus sessions, they're probably never going to respond to them, right? And then this gives them a lot of insights as to how they will approach, and then it saves a lot of time, okay? And then what is important once you understand your strengths and weaknesses, the second bit is understanding your thesis and understanding if you have the storytelling channel or ability to transfer the message across.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it comes, for example, the pitching, where we look at the deck and the pitch itself. Why? Because I always like to say to people, if, for example, Aleksandra, you're working in your job, throughout the week, right? And you know best what you do at your job. I cannot tell you what you're doing, what is your job about. You know it way better than I do.
Yeah, exactly.
But my job as a consultant in terms of helping with the deck and the pitch is saying what you're doing is exactly right. You know the right questions, you know the right answers. However, in most of the instances, the way people channel those questions and answers is not the best form to communicate the message. So what we do is we listen to the fund very closely,
Mm-hmm.
but then sort of shape it into storytelling ability where it's an adventure.
Nice.
You know, this is an adventure. This is the access you will be getting with us. This is our competence. This is what we can do. This is what makes us unique. But it's framed in a way that you're showing your competence, you're showing that you are someone who can be trusted, right? And then you're saying, well, this is it, my folks. If you want to talk further, let's hop on another call, right?
Yeah,
So that's a bit of a mystery. I'm not going to reveal the full adventure. That's only for the people who subscribes to the adventure, right? But
exactly.
I'm giving you an outline what this adventure might be and how I might be cool in organizing this adventure. Okay. So that's the second component, I guess, right? So first of all, looking at, honest assessment. The second one is seeing if you're able to, first of all, tell the story to yourself. The reason why I love doing this is because we reignite the passion with people who fundraise because they connected with the fund or with their thesis in more depth upon reflecting on these things. Because if you're able to tell the story to yourself and believe it, and you want to go to adventure, you're excited about it, and
Yeah,
then everyone wants to join you on an adventure, right? So that's the
exactly.
second component, right?
Yeah,
And then the third point is having the infrastructure to get there, right?
yeah,
And this is where, most emerging managers, for example, stumble because they're not aware of the challenges. They need to make mistakes and whatnot. And I guess the cleverest ones are, if I have the money, well, maybe I could have someone who is definitely helping these emerging managers. So I don't really drown the first time, but I can sort of tap in the market and see what it makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and whatnot, right? With someone who has shown credibility, has testimonials and whatnot, right? So this is, for example, where Mara also kicks in, right? Because you guys, you enable emerging managers, not to drown. You give them the operational, ability, right? But which is warm, which is personalized, completely
yes,
tailored to that
exactly.
part of the game, right? And they feel relaxed because now they're able and they're liberated to focus on the other aspects. For example, fundraising,
Yeah,
for example,
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
And this is where we all come in handy, and this is why we're friends of Mara, as as
Yeah,
suggests, right? So this is it. And the third thing, I guess, when because much of our service is about cold outreach, and this is precise reason, maybe what I mentioned in the beginning of the call of the webinar, is that people get stuck at 30 to 70%. And why do they get stuck? Because they exhaust their warm network. So they need to do the cold outreach. It's not a
yeah,
question if they're going to do it, they need to do it. But then again, there has to be a structure. So we have an entire infrastructure that we also offer, time and tested with so many funds. And we say, this is what we would suggest in your instances based on your SWOT analysis, based on your ideal investor profile, right? And then, this is how we would test it. But we would test it in a way we do it together. You're not going to get those LPs in one day.
yeah,
But we give you the clarity, we give you the tools, we give you the support, and you have to go out there.
yeah,
There's nothing, no one's going to solve your problems, but we're looking at enablings, enabling someone, we're looking at supporting someone, we're looking at providing clarity. This is precisely what AQVC does, what precisely what Mara does, right? So we are the enablers and those that, we're also cheerleaders for these people, right? I mean, we're
Exactly,
cheerleaders and
exactly,
you
exactly.
know,
I can say also for Mara, like as we are SPV and feeder fund solution provider, we are like also warehousing those investments prior to launching a fund. So basically, we keep your investments before the fund is launched, and also special purpose vehicle SPV, something that we are doing based using like UK nominee bear trust. And what actually differentiates is, as you said, that human approach, that like warmth, and that like we are always replying on messages, we're always there for the clients, and that's why I think people like working with us because we have that personalized approach. So when you mentioned AI and evolving ecosystem of AI and how everything is like, we are not chatbot or things like that. It's all about human interaction, relationships, and that's why I mentioned also Mara Club community and everything I'm doing with events, with creating these webinars. I just like to connect people in the ecosystem because that connection is really essential, and I think it's crucial because business is business, but business is people's business, right? So basically, people want to work with people they like, people they are inspired to work, people they can rely on, and above all, trust. And how do you build a trust is like through connection, like
Mhm.
relationship building, doing different things together, meeting up often, being there, replying, effective communication. That's all about trust. And trust is very hard to build and maybe even harder to maintain. But once it's there, it's trust. And people still stay with you, they trust you, they will do business with you, they will talk to you, they will ring you any point in their day just to ask you some random question if you can help them for. So I think that's something that actually like differentiate us, and even the orange color of our brand logo is trust.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think that's something that actually help this environment to thrive and connect the same as you do in AQVC raise.
For sure. I mean, I can personally vouch for the warmth and competence of everyone I met at Bara, for sure. I mean,
Thank you.
my one of my jobs is to have partnerships, I guess, and you guys are very, very warm, but also very competent. I love the fact that you have a very, a specific niche. You know exactly what you're doing. You have the clarity when you approach your clients, and what I guess how we can relate that as well is that most, especially emerging managers, right? They underestimate the amount of juggling they will need to do in their day,
Exactly.
right? And that honest assessment is also very, very important. And someone who's capable will tell them, well, listen, I know you think as a small team, sometimes even as a solo GP, right? You think you can handle all of them. But let's just look at the possibility of maybe you will not succeeding with that because we really work with lots of people, right? So essentially what trust is, and where also Mara helps is, let us do this part so you can have that low bureaucracy
Exactly.
moment, right? Where you have that
Yeah.
transparency, you have that knowledge, you have trust, people you can rely on. And then you juggle with less because you feel secure that someone is taking care of things properly from A to Z, and you don't really have to have nightmares about it, right? That's I guess, the crucial bit in this domain, right?
Yeah.
And I guess in general, relaxing into that, and I guess it's always an ecosystem.
Yes.
So you cannot work on stuff just by yourself. You cannot
Of course.
expect to succeed if you don't have an ecosystem. And it's all about being, open enough and also wise enough, to sort of create that ecosystem around you, right? And, this is why we're super happy to be friends of Mara as well, I guess,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, as we are wrapping up this, like I would just also like to talk more about future fundraising.
Mhm.
But before that, I will also like to just mention that Mara is a platform that helps, like a fintech solution that helps investors do smoother onboarding through KYC AML that is done online, and that it's very easy to track capital calls and everything. So like with the sort of fintech and technology that we were mentioning before, we are helping. But of course, there is that human component that I think differentiate us from the others. So when it comes to the future technology, fundraising, what would you say? How will future of fundraising looks like in 2 to 3 years?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely going to be technology heavy. If we're all not doomed and the world comes to end.
Yeah, definitely.
So we'll see how that goes. We're all hoping it won't, right?
Yeah.
But it's definitely going to be technology heavy. I think people will get more accustomed to using AI in everyday life. It's not just going to be in automation and not just even agents as nowadays, but there's going to be agentic services as well, full pack of services. So many of our companies will transform in that domain, right? But then again, it's still going to be a relationship focused game.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I guess this is the case is because it's money in the
Yeah.
end. And money, when looked at properly, is essentially I'm giving you trust to take, well, good care of my money, replicate it, multiply it, and also make some impact. Some people just want to make money, and if impact is just like a secondary thing, it's cool, right? And there's a lot of investors who say, I want to make money, I want to make impact, and all of this, right? So you pick your investors, I guess, based on that. So I think that is definitely going to be helpful. But another thing is that we're probably going to be more sharp in targeting because we're going to have a lot of data we can rely on. So we're going to get a bunch of cool insights. We will automate a lot of our stuff, right? But then again, we'll probably be more focused on truly selecting our investors, our founders, our partners with more depth because of the saturation of what the modern world is doing. And it's just too much. I
Yes.
mean, every once in a while, as a single person, just want to go to a mountain top on a cabin and just say, bye bye, everyone, right?
Yeah.
So, and instead of doing that, it's just creating that small piece of the haven in a sense where you're there, you have that ecosystem, and precisely because what you're doing. Because right now, I think what most companies across the board are getting wrong, perhaps, is
Mhm.
that they want to do everything all at once too soon, right? And
Yes.
then they don't do anything. Right, because there's that infinite scroll and that doom scrolling, and it's eternity. And human minds don't do well with eternity. It's very hard concept to grasp. That's why we have even spirituality and stuff like that, where you spend a lifelong journey of understanding what it truly is and how to make peace with it, right? But it's the same here. So getting that sort of a niche where you work, where you're good at, that ecosystem, and having technology help you with that, automating that process. But it first starts with that honest assessment. So it sort of starts, you help technology, and if you're able to help technology to help you, then technology keeps on helping you, right? So this is that part of the cognition, right? Otherwise, if you don't set up even the prompt, if you don't set up the prompt well, I mean, you're just gonna, garbage in, garbage out, right? So you
Yes,
have
exactly.
to,
What you put in, you get out. Like you can't like garbage in, garbage out. But just like as you said, like we need to be smart when using technology at the same time and AI and everything. But still, like there is that human interaction and feeling that you don't need to worry about something if somebody got you. Like
yeah.
if, like for example, in case of Mara, like if we got you, like okay, you need quickly to set up a SPV, we are there for you. You need
Mhm.
to set up like a fund or you want to like, we are here. We are here for you and we can take care of it. So you can just ease low bureaucracy. You don't need to think about it because we did it, we know how to do it, and we will be doing it. So I think that's something that the feeling of ease, that all these things can be done very quickly, easily, and tailored to your solution, especially because we are very effective in complex solution and complex situations.
Yeah.
So that's
Hmm.
something I think that is worth mentioning, and yeah, definitely future is bright, I guess. Just we need to be smart when using all these technologies and everything.
Well, every crisis is an opportunity, right? I mean,
Exactly.
whenever there's a crisis, you see people winning, you see people losing, right? And of course, sometimes the circumstances are just crushing you. You cannot do anything about it. But in many cases, there's just the way you look at the opportunity, right? So having that right ecosystem is very important because, if you surround yourself with cool people, you are also sort of, have a propensity to become cool too, right? And if you,
Yeah.
sharp people, so it's very,
Yeah.
important who your friends are, as
Yeah.
the webinar said,
Exactly.
right? It's very, very important. And another thing, I guess, where technology would help is, because you, Mara, and QVC will only be doing this job better and better because there's going to be more and more data to connect, more and more coherence, more and more context, right? And this is why it's always awesome to have that support from an expert who knows what they're doing and they have this huge context behind it, which takes ages, years to collect. And I mean, it's worth investing into something that's going to truly, save a huge
Help.
chunk of your life.
Yeah, and help you. Like you don't need to take like headache free. So yeah, I would like to ask our participants if they have any questions. We are open to answer any questions you may have. So if there are any questions, feel free. I will
Mhm.
just wait maybe a minute or two. If not, we will wrap up soon because I'm
Mhm.
okay. Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah. I think, yeah, I see one raised hand. Sasha would like to ask a question.
Mhm.
Hey, hey, how's it going, Alexandra? Great webinar, well done. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just question for Stevan. What are the key attributes of emerging managers do you see that go on to raise successfully?
That's a beautiful question. So the key attributes is first of all humility. So if we have a GP who has to be humble, so I guess even if, I mean, on average, we see either a solo GP or up to 7 people, 3 to 7 people, depending on the funds, right? But I think humility is one of the main elements or main attributes. Why? Not just because it's moral, I always like to say that, but because you have a clarity of vision. That's why I always say, 30 or 40, 40, 50. You've already been hit by life so many times. So now you're more careful and you see life with that, humble ability. You're not making assumptions. You're actually listening to experts. And that honest assessment that I mentioned, so the ability to self-reflect or metacognition is very, very important. So if a fund or an emerging manager recognizes that maybe they don't have the experience or the ability to metacognate or think about their thesis in that way, it's always cool to have someone support them in that regard. Okay, so they can assess themselves. And I think even if people are prone to doing that themselves, I think it's always good to have a partner because I think we reveal one another through relationships, right? Because if you have so many ideas about the thesis, if you don't communicate it to someone, you cannot really see how the idea manifests itself, right? It sort of gets stuck in your head, all of those possibilities. So an honest assessment is very important. So honesty, humility, also competence, but competence in a way where you're able to truly digest and hence through storytelling say, this is where I'm competent, and this is where my competence ends. And this is where I have partners in my ecosystem who are competent to support me with the remaining bits of competence that are needed to get this vision, uh, you know, um, working, functioning, and returning, providing those returns. So that's also very, very, very important. And in that regard, you need people, you need technology if you make that assessment. So that's quite important. And I think also following up, you would be shocked most likely of how many times we get LPs saying people are not properly following up. It's always very messy. We know that life is very busy, but it's usually not very regular, not very informative. So if you're an LP, you don't really, because I mean, you're still raising your first fund. You don't want to sound incompetent in the eyes of an LP, but actually that ends up hurting a lot of emerging managers. So it's better to have honesty and humility. And sometimes even prior to writing an LP report or going back to other LPs, find that LP who gets you the most and then ask them, if you got this report, would it really resemble what we're doing? Right? Because we're doing this first time. Even if I was a founder for so many times, I'm doing raising my first fund, and I mean I'm just starting essentially, right? So I need any help that I can get. And funny enough, the LP will appreciate that because you're showing your competence, but you're showing the limits of your competence and you're saying, this is where I need your help, right? And if I'm able to do that, I'm also going to help you because not only will this benefit you as an LP, but will indirectly benefit you once again because all of the other LPs will get that same information, will be on board because of some of the competence input that you gave us as an LP in the end, right? So you see how everything keeps on giving if the relationships are set right, or if maybe just to conclude everything, if you're able to truly understand what relating is and how to create relationships. I think it's all about that. There's a lot of people who maybe get that part wrong. So, understanding how relationships function and what's their purpose, I think might be cool. Hopefully that answers the question once
Yeah,
again.
I mean, I think this was really amazing answer. I think this was maybe also the answer that could be an advice for the audience, like to be open, transparent, honest, and to tell their story with a passion, and at the same time to surround themselves with a good ecosystem and create trust and use the solutions that will really help them have a headache-free fundraising journey.
Yes, for sure. I fully agree on that. I would just add one thing, which is so prominent, objections. Please, that's perhaps my biggest advice. Love the objections, expect them, use them, see what they're telling you, use them as opportunities, use them in your communication. So go on to your LPs, whoever you're fundraising, and say, this is the objection that we get. We don't know how to handle it. I mean, how would you handle it, for example? You see, this opens conversations. So that's like really, really cool because you also, once again, showing that sort of limits. So I think objections should be something that I would constantly stress even when we're refurbishing decks and pitches and whatnot. So objections, because you should expect suffering. Okay, you should expect conflicts. You should be courageous enough to confront them because through conflicts, healthy conflicts, I mean conflicts with
Yeah.
objections, right? If used well, these are the exact markers of a good relationship because we hit a wall and we go through it together. And if we constantly are able to go through another wall and another wall, another wall together, and it means that we're on that adventure together. We have, like playing a game, chapter
Yeah.
one, chapter two, or whatever, the way the games are, like level one, level two, right? But if we're showing to one another that we can constantly go to the next level together, that means that when we have conflict, our conflict is very fruitful. And people expect, I guess that's another advice. The reason why I'm wrapping up with this is because people expect that there's some sort of a possibility that it's going to be easy. It's never going to be easy, right? It can only be clear. You can only be healthy, that you have partners and friends you can rely on, but it's never going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of hours put into that, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
if you have someone, if you have a good route, if you have people who enable that route, they have got good pointers on that journey, and people you can rely and go on to that adventure together, that it makes it worthwhile. Actually, that suffering is what makes you suffer well. It's not if you suffer or not, you just choose to suffer well, and that's amazing, right? So I would maybe wrap it up with that.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Very positive wrapping up. Thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for all the insights from the industry, from your own experience, from your own point of view. Yeah, I think it was very useful for all our audience. I would just like to say, yeah, if you would like to hear more about us or to learn more, just visit websites marinvest.com and AQVC. And also follow us on LinkedIn for another Mara and Friends series that are coming up soon. And yeah, once again, Stevan, thank you very much for your time. This was a brilliant conversation, and hopefully see you again soon for the next webinar.
Thank you, Aleksandra and the team. It was a privilege, it was an honor, and hopefully it was fruitful and helpful to the audience.
I think definitely it was. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, everybody.
Likewise. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.